Greetings, fellow sapiens, Xisher declared with enthusiasm. I am the observer assigned to your unit. In response, Xisher received a mix of grunts, casual haze, and general indifference. Undeterred, Xisher kept its optimism. I'm thrilled to be part of this mission and look forward to observing you humans in action. Excited? One of the humans asked. Why? Xisher noticed this human's rank insignia, a single silver bar on each shoulder. Xisher had carefully studied the various rank insignia used by human militaries and recognized this particular insignia indicated the human to be a low-level officer. Well, I've read every treatise and dissertation with regards to human warfare, and I find your species' take on it to be fascinating, Xisher replied. Fascinating, you say? The human lieutenant asked. I've been assured that almost every species in the galaxy has practiced warfare. Isn't it pretty much all the same? Oh no, Xisher responded. You humans have done something that I have never seen documented anywhere else. The human lieutenant just cocked an eyebrow. Xisher had learned that this often indicated curiosity, so it continued. Despite the primitiveness of your weapons, I have learned that humans consider the use of certain weapons to be off-limits. So much so, in fact, that these weapons have banned under international and interstellar treaty. Ah, the lieutenant responded. Yeah, we do that with weapons that are particularly horrific. We haven't had to do dash. The lieutenant stopped mid-sentence as another human walked up and attempted to hand something to her. What is it, Sergeant? Flash traffic, sir. Looks like we've got work to do, the sergeant replied. This new human had walked up with a calm confidence. He even stood with confidence. Xisher wasn't sure how one could stand with confidence, but this human had done so. Xisher attempted to assess this human's rank insignia, but it was unable to do so before the lieutenant barked an order to ready the men, and the sergeant walked away. Xisher wasn't able to ask any more questions in the bustle of activity as the troops got ready for their new mission. That was okay. It was just excited to be able to observe the process. Once everyone was loaded onto the transport, and they were airborne, Xisher was still unable to ask any further questions. Instead, it took notes and tried to record what transpired. The human who had delivered the news of the mission to the lieutenant was delivering a briefing en route. Listen up! The male human started with a yell. His entire speech was at very nearly the same volume as the yell. A British rifle company has been pinned down in a makeshift blockhouse for about 2 weeks. The remaining enemy force is estimated to be approximately battalion level in strength. I guess the limey creature finally got bored because they're asking for help. As the human spoke, Xisher was able to get a good look at this human's rank insignia. It was 3 chevrons sitting atop 2 rockers with rifles crossed in the space between the chevrons and rockers. It couldn't remember exactly what this rank meant, but it was certain that the rank was a fairly high non-commissioned officer rank. Xisher made a note of the pattern while marveling at the fact that this human, despite the volume of his speech, appeared to exude the same level of calm confidence he had displayed previously. That confidence belied the tension of the situation. The human continued, We are to land on the opposite side of the enemy and play hammer to the Brits' anvil. Just a reminder, fighting will be close, hard, and fast. You! The human pointed at Xisher, causing it to startle a bit. We won't have time to babysit you. Stay close, but stay behind us and out of the line of fire. Xisher intended to protest, but the human was no longer paying attention to it, so it decided to examine the human's equipment instead. Each human had a rifle. While these weapons used a magnetic charge rather than the chemical propellant humans had been using when they first joined galactic civilization, they were still primitive slug throwers. Many of the humans also had a smaller weapon, which seemed to be referred to interchangeably as a sidearm, a handgun, or a pistol. These were also primitive magnetic slug throwers, but humans had proven to be quite effective with slug throwers in past conflicts. Most of the humans also had another long weapon. It was similar to, but distinctly different from the rifles that they all carried. Before Xisher could ask about these weapons, the transport landed. As the transports landed, the humans disembarked, formed up, and started moving toward the enemy with minimal communication and practiced efficiency. Initially, the battle was fairly typical, although Xisher was able to directly observe the truth behind the rumors of human resilience and resistance to battle damage. It also observed the truth behind the rumors of human speed and endurance, as it struggled to keep up. There was certainly no risk that Xisher would be able to get ahead of the humans, and it was more and more thankful for that as the battle unfolded. As the humans advanced, they worked their way into the enemy's defensive positions. Once in the tighter quarters, many of them switched to their alternate long guns, and many of the ones who did not have such weapons switched to their sidearms. Xisher would later learn that this was because the smaller weapons were easier to maneuver in the tight spaces. The humans' magnetically charged weapons weren't silent, but they were reasonably quiet. Xisher's auditory sensors were easily able to detect the sound of the rifles and handguns' discharge and recharge the magnetic coils most of the time, but those sounds were quickly drowned out by the sound of projectiles breaking the sound barrier. Just as it started to wonder why the humans would choose to switch to a different large weapon instead of the smaller weapon, Xisher's was answered. Two enemies stepped around the corner and into the hallway. One of the humans discharged several rounds from his pistol. Xisher was unable to hear anything after the first shot from the pistol, because the other human's weapon emitted a loud boom, followed by a rapid click-clack. As they pushed further into the enemy's defenses, Xisher noticed even more of the boom, click-clack sounds and fewer of the sounds typical of the other human weapons. There was still a smell of ozone in the air, which was, again, typical of human weapons, but there was also another smell, one which Xisher didn't have a way to describe. Also, the air was becoming partially filled with smoke, and Xisher's best guess is that the smoke came from the weapons that made the boom, click-clack sounds. These weapons also seemed to emit flames from the end of them, although the flames did not go far enough to harm the enemy directly, nor did they seem to endure long enough to ignite anything nearby. Wait! Xisher began to wonder. Are these some of the chemically powered firearms I have read about in my studies of human warfare? That curiosity was cut short by another boom. Click-clack. As they pushed forward, the enemy was forced to abandon their defensive position and only had one direction in which to move. They quickly found themselves under fire from two sides. The humans that Xisher was with continued to use their boom, click-clack weapons or their handguns until the enemy reached a certain distance, at which point all of the humans quickly switched back to using their rifles. Xisher let the humans open up the gap and stayed back for a moment to examine the bodies of some of the enemies who were hit with the loud long guns. The bodies that had been hit from very close range had a single, massive entrance hole. The bodies that had been hit from a more moderate range seemed to have several holes, all of which were much smaller than the single holes made from the very close range hits, but any of which was more than sufficient to quickly incapacitate anyone by its estimation. Xisher turned a few of these enemies over to search for exit wounds, and the only descriptor it could bring itself to write in the report was gruesome and horrific. Xisher caught back up with the humans just as the fighting died down. What was left of the enemy had decided to surrender, and the humans from the different units were talking. Good thing you showed up when you did. We were starting to run low on ammo. Thought maybe we'd have to send the Gurkha out there to have a talk with him. One of the humans from the other faction said, motioning toward a small-statured man with a large, curved knife on his belt. The human from Xisher's group with the 3 chevrons and 2 rockers laughed at that and said, "Well, now, that would have just been unfair." While Xisher agreed that it would be unfair to send out one man with a large knife against an army, it failed to see any humor in that fact and said so. "You misunderstand, mate," came the response. Xisher would later learn that this individual was a Brit, or so its humans claimed. It would be unfair to them, the Brit woman said as she motioned toward the captured enemies. Xisher's maw gaped, and the British woman turned back to the other human in the conversation and asked, "Who's this joker?" "Military observer," came the response from the male human. "Supposed to be some sort of book-smart expert on human warfare." "Some expert," the Brit replied. "I am here to learn," Xisher interjected. "There are things that one can only learn by being in the middle of things. For example? The woman asked while the man asked in unison. Like what? These weapons, Xisher said, while pointing at the chemically powered weapon the human male carried. I understand that humans have banned weapons for being too horrific to use in warfare. I've seen the wounds made by these weapons. How are they not banned? Funny, the man said. The Germans asked the same question. Guess you Yanks just had better lawyers, the British woman replied light-heartedly. So, drinks? You buying? The man asked. Clearly the humans thought the question was resolved. Xisher disagreed, but knew the answer would not be found here. Xisher still paid attention to their conversation as it walked away. If that's what it takes to keep from drinking that piss water you blokes try to pass off as beer, the woman replied. Then sure, Gunny, I'll buy the first one. At least we refrigerate our piss first. EW. Xisher knew humans could consume nearly anything, but Xisher spent the rest of its time attached to the human military unit trying to figure out how this one weapon had not been banned by the humans. It did learn that the humans called this thing a shotgun, but could never get a more satisfactory answer than, the Americans had better lawyers. Xisher considered starting a petition to get this shotgun banned in interstellar warfare.